So I guess they wanted me to explain what's happening with Matt. Matt, after the game 2 nights ago, came in the next morning and his ankle was feeling a bit stiff. Previously, had thought that he had previously completely recovered symptomatically, was feeling great with the ankle. And yesterday morning came in saying that his ankle felt real stiff, was difficult getting it loose. So as a precaution was held out of play yesterday, and overnight developed a bit more pain. Came in this morning and pain had significantly improved, but it was still a bit stiff. And so based on his course that he had an exacerbation of the symptoms, we got new x-rays today that were completely normal, but then sent him for an MRI scan to make sure that there was no new areas of injury in the bones of the ankle. And that MRI scan indicated swelling in one of the major weight-bearing bones of the ankle. And since that is an area that can be vulnerable with impact and injury, we have to protect Matt. That could lead to further injury. That indicates a weakness in the bone where it's swollen, and we need to protect his weight bearing to prevent developing a true fracture of the talus.
Doctor, is this something you expect to heal with rest, long period of rest?
Yes, we're going to have to protect his weight bearing, and we would expect that this would heal with rest. But it doesn't heal quickly. Because it is weight bearing, you have to get the pressure off of that to prevent collapse. When the bone swells, it can become weak, and with continued weight bearing, that part of the bone can subside and collapse. And because it's a weight bearing part of the joint, you have to make sure that the geometry of that joint stays perfect. Otherwise, you get earlier arthritis. And so it's important to give that time to heal, and that won't happen overnight, unfortunately, for Matt and for the rest of his season.
Based on your experience, about how long did something like that take range-wise?
Pardon me?
How long, based on your experience, what kind of range are you talking about to let that heal?
Well, I think that he's probably going to have limited weight bearing for at least a month, and then after that, then see how the ankle's coming along with regard to getting him back. But certainly he's going to be recovering from this into the off season.
Other options, one thing that kind of happened the last couple of days, or just was it a cumulative type of situation?
Well, that's a good question. I think that you probably have to assume that he had a pretty severe ankle injury, and because it seemed to be more than just a typical ankle sprain, at about 10 days after his original ankle injury, we repeated x-rays and got an MRI scan. And the MRI scan showed what we had expected to see with the ligaments, but there was no visible fracture. And so, but most likely you have to assume that injury was bad enough that it probably set up some weak areas of the bone microscopically that you can't see and identify, no matter how many high-tech tests you get. And so you just have to, the only thing you can do sometimes is be vigilant and listen to the ankle. And if the ankle improves and then starts talking to you again, you have to see it. And so we basically wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to let him play with pain. And there were a few things that we were going to look for that we absolutely wouldn't let him play with. And this was one of those things.
Would you call it a hairline fracture?
I mean, no, hairline fracture even indicates a true structural break, but this is more on a microscopic level of swelling in the bone, where on a microscopic level there is some disruption within the bone, bad enough to cause swelling. And it's that swelling in the bone that hurts, but it's also that swelling in the bone that creates a weakness, and weakness to compression. So you have to protect the geometry of the joint. So I guess it's a matter of semantics, but I wouldn't call it what people typically think is a hairline crack. I wouldn't call it that. This is more on a microscopic level. You can't see on regular x-rays.
Are there other options that this does not improve over time?
Yes.
What are they?
Well, this isn't the type of thing that you worry about developing a non-united fracture or something like that, but it is something you worry about subsiding. We're going to prevent that with preventive weight bearing. would there potentially be a chance that you might have to do an arthroscopy of the ankle to take a look for any little cartilage chips that might be inside there? That's possible. But right now, the main reason to put him out of play is not because of that, it's just to protect that bone. So we fully expect that that will heal given enough time and relative protection from weight bearing.
So the idea is, in a month, take it out of the, if everything's on course, great. If not, that's when you might proceed with the procedure you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that surgery for this is, you would only do surgery for this if you had true collapse and fragmentation of the joint and things like that. That's not what we're talking about here. If he were to develop any symptoms of that he may have some loose little chips in his ankle or something like that, the only reason I mention that is because there's a remote chance with any of these bad ankle injuries that if you have symptoms down the line and you ask, would there potentially be any other thing you might have to do? And I think there's a remote chance of something like
So
that.
that'd be something where you might not be able to pick it up on the x-rays because they were so small, but they might be in that.
You can't see anything on the x-rays. These x-rays are, but the MRI scan shows, more detail. And so we see the typical injuries that happen on an MRI scan with these, and just as rarely that this type of thing, occurs. Maybe there might be some things that has to be addressed arthroscopically, but unlikely.
If things go according to plan, then he would, in theory, be ready by spring training. So
Yes.
When you say a month of limited weight bearing, are you talking about off his feet completely, or?
Yeah, crutches with what we call touchdown weight bearing, where you just simply touch the foot down to the ground. And will allow the ankle to remain either in a boot or protective splint that can be removed to be able to move the ankle to keep the joint nourished, but protect him from weight bearing with crutches for at least a month.
Matt also mentioned that he's going to have a cleanup procedure on the shoulder during the offseason. Could you clarify exactly what needs to be done in there?
He's got some progressive arthritis of his AC joint. It's a different joint than that he injured last year. This is the end of the collarbone and not the true ball and socket joint of the shoulder.
Same issue that you had in June, I think it was?
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of guys battle with inflammation and moderate symptomatic arthritis of their AC joint. That's not an uncommon issue, and when it becomes recurrent enough that it hurts them when they swing or throw, then sometimes you just can't treat it with repeated injections. You have to clean out the joint.
And what's the recovery time or something like that?
Usually at about 6 weeks, they can start to do baseball type activities.
When would you do the surgery? Do you know yet?
That we haven't scheduled it yet.
it'll be sooner.
Clear to travel with the team?
That's up to
But he'll have your okay.
from our standpoint, he's clear.
What's the official name of the bone that's affected with the swelling?
Talus, Talus.
While you're here, what's your latest update on Ethiopia and where he's standing between now?
I'm going to give that over to Stan.
Okay.